Rev up your engine. Now here is a Chevy HHR. They're kind of strange looking vehicles. They were in direct competition with this crazy Chrysler PT Cruisers. They were both made in Mexico. This is made by GM. The PT Cruisers were made by Chrysler. Now, the PT Cruisers were absolute rolling piles of junk. That gas could blow on the engines. The transmissions, which were a new design, would blow up. They were one of the worst cars ever made. Now, both these and the PT Cruisers were made from about 2001 to 2011. The particular one is a 2010 HHR, second to last year they made them. And as far as I'm concerned, it's actually one of the better ones that they made. The earlier ones had engine problems, transmission problems. Now this one has 180,000 miles on it. It's the original 4-cylinder Ecotec engine. It gets good gas mileage. Still has the original automatic transmission. Now, this is all plastic, and he bought it. Somebody had wrecked it before, and then he kept slamming the hood. He didn't know this was plastic, so it started cracking it off. But then again, it's not rusted. It's all solid. It's not rotted away. Being 2011, that it's 12 years old. He says he gets about 25 miles a gallon on the highway. They're not phenomenal with gas mileage. The Ecotec engine does put out a reasonable amount of horsepower. It's a lot better than the PT Cruisers for sure. The reason the PT Cruisers blew up is because their engine didn't have enough oomph, and so people kept pushing them as hard as they could, and then they blew them up. And of course, Americans don't maintain things all that well. This guy bought this thing with 8,000 miles on it. He's got 180 now. He changes the oil every 5,000 miles, and it's actually in good shape. Like I say, doesn't burn any oil. It's a classic front-wheel drive car, so it's going to be as efficient as it possibly can. And sure, those aren't real LA wheels. They're hubcaps. Even they're fading away, even though they're plastic. It's got a lot of space in it, and he uses it as his only car. So I'm going to go through it because he wants to see, hey, do I have to do anything? What kind of shape is it in? And of course, that's a very good question to answer on something this old with 180,000 miles. Before we do that, we'll kind of take a look inside. And I mean, they did put chrome plastic on stuff. Decent looking, you know. It's got the cool little sunglass hider there. The seats are relatively comfortable, and they do have a lot of room in the back. Okay, a lot of space. The AC still works. Now, he hasn't put any serious money into it whatsoever. It's still pretty much bone stock. And of course, these stupid little struts, they're broken. Hence the stick over here. But they all break. You're not going to buy those. Stick works fine. Or you can get vice grips and clamp them here. That's what I always do. Considering it's got 180,000 miles on it, I mean, not that much to complain about, really. So it's out with the new scan tool I'm testing out. Now, the first thing I notice, it's telling you tire pressure monitoring gauges and the tires are worn out. Who cares? He's not going to spend money on that. He just uses the tire gauge. The scanner's doing its thing. We're going to do a system scan. And here we go. It's loading all the information. Okay, it's scanning through. While we're waiting, got nice window panels here, easy to get to. And believe it or not, it's still got a factory CD player in it, which says no disc. Hey, it still works. Through all the systems, no fault codes yet. We don't really care about these codes. Device circuit voltage below threshold for the radio and the remote control door receiver lock, and all the sensors for the tires don't work because it's so old. He's not going to spend a bunch of money fixing them, so we don't care. Everything that matters, you can see, is green. So what we're going to do is start it up, and we'll check out live data. And we'll see what kind of shape it's in. The ignition system's getting plenty of voltage, 14.6. The injector pulse width is pretty stable. 2.103, 2.043, that's pretty close. This thing does have 180-something thousand miles. The long-term fuel trim is only 1.563. Now it's 0.781. And now it is 0, but now it's subtracting a tiny amount of fuel. That's 781 thousandths of 1%, which is almost nothing. So it has a lot of miles on it, but hey, it's still in pretty good shape. Sometimes the fuel trim's 0. I've seen Lexuses that were 1 or 2%. This one's really close to 0. While we're at it, we'll look at misfire data. And as we look at it, the injector test status is all good for all of them. The injectors were never disabled, all no, because of a misfire. So obviously it's not misfiring, but we'll go to that anyways. There's the data for misfire on all the cylinders. 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0, 0, 0. Total misfire 0. So it's got 180,000 miles on it. And really, the only thing that's not working are right are the stupid sensors for the tire pressure monitoring system and some BS with the radio. Who cares about that? If this had been a PT Cruiser, I can guarantee you there would have been probably dozens of trouble codes. It wouldn't be running as smooth as this is running. So let's take it for a road test and see how it shifts. You see the tire pressure monitoring lights on. We don't care. He fills the tires up. Nobody's going to spend money buying sensors and getting them recalibrated on this thing. There's no reason to. First thing I noticed as I put it in gear, this baby doesn't shake. Now, I have never seen a PT Cruiser that didn't shake when it was in drive. This thing, hey, still pretty smooth. Let's see how it shifts. I truthfully couldn't even feel that shift. I could hear the RPMs go down, but hey, realize though, this is an elderly gentleman who does not drive like a maniac. He babies his cars. This is his only car and he wants to keep it up. And hey, I gotta say, it may not look it on the outside, but this is the most impressive HHR I've ever been in because he's had it since 8,000 miles and he's taken care of it. I mean, it just shifted gears. Getting the PT Cruiser to do this, it'll be going bum, bum. This thing is still really smooth. At least they were only putting them together in Mexico. They weren't building the engines and transmissions down there. Now, it's not a great handling vehicle, but it's not horrible. It has a little tendency of oversteering. And as we slow down, there's nobody behind us, we'll give it a little gas and see what happens. And sounds good. You saw that? Shifting is smooth. Now, it's not a rocket ship. It's not throwing me back in the seat. But, hey, it's running perfectly fine. And I'll get rid of wind noise. It's not all that loud. I mean, I can hear tire noise, but hey, you're gonna hear tire noise in any car. Track's perfectly straight. Got my hands off the wheel, no problem. And for those of you who want space, like I said, look in the back seat. This baby's got a lot of room. That was part of the deal. Now, the PT Cruisers also had an awful lot of space inside, but unfortunately, they often weren't running down the road. They were in the repair shop or had an early death and ended up in a junkyard, where this one's still rolling down the road. The HHRs were better made. Well, the self-canceling left turn signal doesn't work anymore, so we have to turn it off by hand now. Pretty quiet. I don't hear a bunch of wheel bearings. I don't hear transmission whining, engine noises. He's taking care of this car. Now, the problem with these cars basically were little bitty four-cylinder engines. People who do not maintain their cars blew the engines up. You got to take care of these little cars. He has, and hey, it's paid him back. He bought it with 8,000 miles on it. Now it's got 180, and it's still running pretty good. And he paid about 10 grand for it when he got it used, so 10 grand for 180,000 miles is a steal these days, because they claim if you buy a new car, it's going to cost you about $6,000 to $7,000 a year to have that car. He got 180,000 miles out of 10 grand. As I said, you can see the plastic chrome platings coming up. You know, they can't chrome plate plastic. It's plastic that's chrome plated, and some of the plastic got cracked and stuff, but it still runs down the road. It doesn't burn oil. Still doesn't look bad, the rest of it. And you felt how that thing shifted. Or I should say you didn't feel it, because I didn't even feel it driving the car. It still shifts like a dream. Now, granted, it's an elderly gentleman who takes care of his vehicles, and this thing is taking care of him. You can see they have a horrible reputation amongst car people because car people beat the heck out of them. They stress them too much. It's not a race car. And all things considered, GM made an awful lot of these four-banger Ecotech engines. Even if you had one blow up, there's a billion of them in junkyards from wrecks. So you can still get parts for these cars. A lot is interchangeable with stuff. Just remember, they were assembled in Mexico. The PT Cruisers, they had a lot more of their stuff manufactured in Mexico than these, and they just fell apart in front of your very eyes. Now, even though these look about the same, looks can be deceiving. Never, under any conditions, buy a PT Cruiser unless you're a mechanic and you want something to show people how poorly made vehicles are that you'll be fixing all the time. One of these that's in a shape like this one is, hey, it's still got a lot of life left in it. I'm shocked. I'm really shocked, but that's because he took care of the thing. And if you take care of things, even I had a girl bring me a Fiat 500 Abarth, the racing edition. It had 170,000 miles. It still ran like a clock. But she raced motorcycles and she took care of her machinery. So even with that, the Fiat Abarth was still running good. And this It's certainly better built than the Fiat Abarthas. I guess they were just kind of no man's land. They're not a car, they're not a station wagon, they're really not an SUV. There's nothing to really say what these are, and they just replaced them with small SUVs. Gone all into small SUVs and a higher profit margin. These were inexpensive cars to buy, so they're not making that much money selling them to you either. They want to sell you bigger ones for more money. And they're still making them in Mexico too. A lot of them are made in Mexico with a high price. This at least had a low price when they were building them. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.